What is up, and welcome back to Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. As always, I am your host, Brandon Silvers. Today, we are talking about interesting contract issues facing players in the NFL and WNBA. Hope y'all had a great week, and I can guarantee it will get even better if you like, subscribe, rate, review, and share this show. All right, let's get into it. So you may have noticed, but I don't talk about the NFL too much in season. The main reason is that I usually record on a Friday so I can get everything edited and posted by Monday morning. So everything that I say in an episode could be old news before the episode even drops, and that's bad for everybody. But we're at a point with a couple of issues in particular in the NFL where I feel very confident that nothing that happens on Sunday will change what I'm about to tell you. Those are famous last words, of course, but I'm willing to risk it. One of the big talking points over the offseason and pretty much until the season started centered around paying players, mostly not paying running backs. Giants running back Saquon Barkley was the main focal point of this conversation. He was threatening to hold out until he got a new deal. All the other running backs were like, man, if he's not getting paid, then I'm probably not going to get paid either. So they organized a Zoom meeting only for Saquon to accept a deal slightly, just slightly better than what he was initially offered, and that was that. And it's easy to see why running backs are upset. According to SpotTrack, running backs have the lowest average salary of all non-special teams positions except for fullbacks, and there are maybe 3 fullbacks in the league now, so I don't know if you can even really count them. On top of getting paid the least on average, they also have the shortest career length of any position group. So they have a very short window to maximize their earning potential and get paid the least during that window. And a running back's general job description also adds insult to literal injury. Football, at its core, is a game of violence. There's just violence everywhere. The most amount of violence is directed at the person holding the football, and the running back's main job is to hold this little ball of violence. So it stinks because the reason they're not paid a lot is the same reason they have such short careers. If your job is to hold the ball of violence, you're going to get injured a lot, and teams don't want to give you a lot of money if you're not going to play. Just this season, we've already seen Saquon go out with an ankle injury, and another star running back, Nick Chubb, mess up his knee by having it turn directions. Knees just don't go. Also, the game has changed. Some of it has to do with the fact that you can't rely on a running back for the reasons I just talked about. Some of it has to do with rule changes, and some of it is just a natural evolution of the game. When I was growing up, running backs were the focus of the offense. Your team would have one guy, he'd get all the carries. The offense was either a balanced attack or run first, and it just felt like there was running back talent everywhere. Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith, Edgerrin James, Terrell Davis, Marshall Faulk, LaDainian Tomlinson, I could go on and on. You still have the Saquons, the Nick Chubbs, the Derrick Henrys, but it's not as widespread as it used to be. You see it not only in how teams spend their money, but also in how they use their draft picks. The last quote-unquote running back draft was 2005 when 3 running backs were drafted in the top 10. Shout out to Ronnie Brown, Cadillac Williams, and Cedric Benson. Rest in peace. Now, every draft didn't look like that, but it was the last hurrah for running backs as far as high draft picks are concerned. Since then, just 11 total have been selected in the first 10 picks. 11 since I was a junior in high school. All the actual capital and draft capital has shifted to the quarterbacks. GMs cannot get enough of quarterbacks. It's embarrassing almost. Have some shame, get a hold of yourself. But you kind of get it because you do need a good quarterback if you're going to win. Plus, the rules make it easier to pass the ball and for the quarterback to stay healthy. Quarterbacks have always been drafted high and gotten huge contracts. That's not new. What is new is the level of quarterback that's getting paid or drafted high. Let's look at Saquon's New York Giants teammate who got a new contract this offseason without having to beg for it, quarterback Daniel Jones. While Saquon will be making $10 million this year, Daniel will be making $40 million. Have you seen Daniel Jones play? Of course you have, because the league insists on putting this team on TV all the time because they play in a city that has more people than other cities. So, since we've all seen him play here, can I ask you honestly, would you pay him $40 to play quarterback for you? No, he's awful. Remember, this is a league that makes it easier to play his position than ever before, and he hasn't thrown for more than 15 touchdowns in a season since his rookie year. At the time of this recording, he's thrown for 3 times as many interceptions as touchdowns, including a pick 6 on Monday Night Football that had his coach wanting to fight him. He's bad, he always looks confused, and he's goofy faced. And he's making $40 million to do this year, while Saquon is on Zoom calls with other running backs trying to make sure his mic isn't on mute, trying to figure out how to get $10 million. And that's just what we're doing with quarterbacks now. You've got Patrick Mahomes, who is obviously elite. You got a handful of guys in the tier below him like Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, depending on the day, and probably Joe Burrow when he's healthy. You got a couple of guys like Justin Herbert, Tua, and Kirk Cousins, who you could maybe talk yourself into because we all need something to believe in. And then you've either got a bunch of unproven guys or trash, which is unbelievable and confusing when you consider where these guys have been drafted. I'm curious to see in a few years what that 2021 draft has done to the drafting of quarterbacks. Are teams still going to be reaching like that? Because that was awful. 5 in the top 15, including the first 3 picks. Number 1, Trevor Lawrence, he's meh. I mean, he was much improved last season, but no signs of being the generational guy that people were making him out to be. The number 2 pick, Zach Wilson, has already started, gotten benched, and then had to come in after the NFL's leading medical expert, Aaron Rodgers, tore his Achilles. Why did they think this would work? Here's my advice for NFL GMs. It doesn't matter what tools a guy has, he cannot be your franchise quarterback if he looks and acts like Hermie the Elf from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. He's been so bad that I've started pulling for him just because I don't want to see him cry. And it's been close. Hopefully, he remembers my kindness come Christmas time. He hadn't even been the worst of the group. Trey Lance went right after him, and I had to remind you of that. He's done 2 things when he has played: looked absolutely overwhelmed and clueless, or broken ankled. San Francisco has already gotten rid of him. Then there's Justin Fields. He's coming off of back-to-back good games, and he had a brief run there last year when they finally decided to let him start using his legs. And you were thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe. But no, he's basically just Black Daniel Jones. Now, wins are not a QB stat. There's so much that goes into winning a football game that it wouldn't be fair to pin it all on the quarterback. You can be good and still lose. But it is funny to point out that Justin Fields is 6-24 as a starting quarterback. Finally, Mac Jones. The Patriots drafted him. He was going to be the next Tom Brady, despite his childbearing hips, and Mac being short for McCorkle. Yes, McCorkle. Well, he's been so bad that people are talking about Bill Belichick like he's Matt Rule. And he's an asshole. He has more dirty plays than good games. Just a complete joke. So what's the solution? You have teams willing to pay quarterbacks a shit ton of money, but not enough great quarterbacks who actually deserve these contracts. And you have all these running backs wanting to get paid, but nobody wants to pay them because they get hurt. And the difference between a great running back and an adequate one doesn't justify big time spending. I talked about the evolution of the game earlier, where we went from run heavy offenses to passing ones. And now we're in an era where we're seeing dual threat quarterbacks. Some, like Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts, do it better than others like Daniel Jones and Justin Fields, but it is certainly becoming a thing, which leads me to what I call the John Smoltz solution. John Smoltz was part of the Atlanta Braves' absolutely filthy starting rotation in the 90s, along with Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine. This is back when starting pitchers just pitched their arms clean off. They were the running backs of baseball. As a result, Smoltz, like Saquon Barkley or a Nick Chubb, started getting hurt. He eventually needed Tommy John surgery to repair his UCL, or as I call it, the ACL of the arm. So what did he do? He was in his mid-30s, which was 89 years old in 1990 starting pitching years. Did he quit? No. He became the Braves' closer. See, he couldn't go out and give you 6, 7, 8 innings anymore, but he could give you one really good, dare I say, great one. So that's what he did. And that's exactly what running backs should do. Start getting hurt? Okay. I can still run, just not as much. Where can I still run, just less, and also have rules that help protect me, and I'll get paid more? Quarterback. And I know what you're thinking. Brandon, you're stupid. What about passing? Well, guess what? You're stupid. I know what I'm talking about. How many quarterbacks can actually pass the ball well? Clearly, it's a non-issue. I could train my dog to throw it like Daniel Jones or Justin Fields. Let's be for real. What about height? Running backs are usually shorter than quarterbacks. Well, they used to be. Tell me, who would you rather have taking snaps? Someone built like Alvin Kamara or someone built like Bryce Young? Quarterbacks have gotten shorter and shorter to the point where that's not even really an issue anymore. Kyler Murray is a literal toddler. Russell Wilson, Tua. The list keeps growing each year. You don't have to be tall to play quarterback anymore. This seems crazy, I know, but this is where the game is headed. It wasn't that long ago that if you could run as a quarterback, they would just change your position, especially if you were black, but that's another episode. Think of all the great college running backs who changed positions in the pros regardless of whether or not they could pass the ball. They put Cordell Stewart at receiver for a bit, Woody Dantzler returned kicks, Eric Crouch was white and won the Heisman, and they made him a receiver. Even Lamar Jackson ran too well for some people, and they wanted him to change positions. Imagine that. He ended up winning MVP as a quarterback. But slowly, the thinking has shifted, especially as a way to justify the lack of arm talent. Yeah, he struggles to make basic throws, but we can at least run him some to open things up until he figures it out. Of the top 25 rushing seasons by quarterbacks ever, 11 have come since 2018. This is where things are headed. You want your quarterback to be able to run. You need him to. And who are the best runners on the team? Running backs. It makes perfect sense. Seriously though, what's the solution? Do all running backs just go on strike? Imagine if they just went out there and they immediately laid down every time they took a handoff. That's honestly probably better for offenses than letting a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo throw the ball down the field. And why would anybody ever want to play running back knowing how things are? Even in college, nobody cares about them. We've had a wide receiver win a Heisman Trophy more recently than a running back. Just 3 have won it since 2000 after 4 won it in the 90s alone, and they still run the ball in college. The position is probably going the way of the back-to-the-basket center in the NBA. Someone who is truly elite at it will still be needed. I mean, you would still build your offense around Shaq post-ups if you had him on your team, just like you'll still hand the ball off to Derrick Henry. Other runners will enhance their value by adding to their skill set. Christian McCaffrey is a great runner, but he's also incredibly valuable because he can catch the ball out of the backfield in that Roger Craig, Marshall Faulk mold. Not a real surprise that he's paid the most each year of all the running backs. He's kind of like a Nikola Jokic, where Jokic posts up better than anybody in the game today, but sprinkles in plenty of non-traditional center skills. Can I make any more cross-sport comparisons? Probably not, but what those comparisons should illustrate is that this is not unique to football. The way sports are played evolves and oftentimes is cyclical. It wouldn't surprise me in a generation or so, assuming football is still legal, that teams have gone back to run-first offenses. In the meantime, good luck running backs. There's still a place for you in this world, just not a big one where you make the most amount of money. Let's move on to the WNBA and talk about an issue that makes me infinitely more uncomfortable than talking about a position where players try to make their brains turn to soup. Dearica Hamby of the Los Angeles Sparks filed an Equal Employment Opportunity Commission complaint against her former team, the Las Vegas Aces, and the WNBA as a whole on the basis of gender discrimination. Quick recap of how we got here and what the lawsuit is alleging. So Hamby was a key player for the Aces, 2-time 6th Woman of the Year, All-Star, all that. She signed a contract extension on June 28th, 2022 to remain with the Aces. According to Hamby, she discovered she was pregnant a couple of weeks later on July 18th, 2022, and told the Aces and her coach Becky Hammon on August 6th, then had the pregnancy confirmed by a doctor on August 8th. This is also the second half of the WNBA season, which is important to teams trying to win a championship for obvious reasons. Clearly, to me at least, not as important as the gift of life, but important nonetheless. Now, she did have a dip in production after finding out that she was pregnant, but I do want to note that correlation doesn't equal causation, and slumps happen. I've gone through plenty of basketball slumps myself, and I assure you I've never been pregnant. If my math is correct, she played in 25 games prior to learning that she was pregnant and averaged nearly 29 minutes per game and 11.3 points in those 29 minutes per game. She played in 8 games after finding out, really 9, but I threw 1 out because she got injured at the beginning of the game. And in those 8 games, she averaged 23 minutes per game, but her scoring went down to 4.1 points per game. Not an insignificant drop, but again, it's a smaller sample size and not necessarily because she was pregnant. If you think her pregnancy was a factor, and it certainly could have been, then you also have to consider that mental stress could also be a factor in her slump, as she alleges the organization and Coach Hammond started making the workplace hostile for her shortly after she told them she was pregnant. She says Hammond questioned her on if she'd been using protection and accused her of signing the contract extension knowing she was pregnant and withholding that information from the organization. Another interesting wrinkle in all this is that the Aces centered a lot of their marketing efforts around Hamby's motherhood to the child she had previously, her daughter Amaya. So anyways, the Aces ended up winning the title last year, and Hamby announced her pregnancy to the public during their championship parade. Fast forward to January 17th of this year. Hamby alleges that Becky Hammon calls her up and tells her that her time with the Aces is done, she was being traded, and she asks her where she wants to be traded to. Hamby alleges that during this conversation, she asked Hammon twice, quote, "You're trading me because I'm pregnant?" And Hammon responded, "What do you want me to do?" She also allegedly told Dearica that she didn't think she'd be ready for the start of the regular season. Now, incredibly, she was, and she didn't miss a game all year after giving birth to her son Legend on March 15th and the season starting 2 months later, which to me does speak to the level of dedication she has to the game. But Hamby's trade to the Sparks was announced a couple days later, and she made an Instagram post that more than hinted at these allegations, and that prompted an investigation by both the league and the Players Association. As a result of that investigation, Becky Hammon was suspended for 2 games for violating the league's respect in the workplace policy, and the Aces were stripped of a 2025 draft pick for promising impermissible benefits to Hamby during her contract negotiations. Best I can figure, they were telling players, look, we can only give you X amount on the books due to the salary cap, but if you sign with us, we'll make it up to you under the table, but that's just me speculating. Hamby's lawsuit alleges, quote, "The investigation also did not result in any tangible remedy to me. Moreover, I do not believe the investigation sought to uncover the truth about my allegations that I was discriminated against for being pregnant, and I believe the respondent, WNBA LLC, failed to properly investigate my claims as a form of retaliation for my public statements." So basically, because Hamby made these allegations public with her Instagram post, it embarrassed the league. So the league, in response to that, didn't really take the investigation seriously to solve the problem or punish the Aces or anything like that. Now, for her part, Becky Hammon has denied any wrongdoing and has said Hamby basically felt betrayed by the trade because they had a close relationship previously, and Hamby presumably assumed she wouldn't be traded by a coach she liked, who liked her, from a team that was a perennial title contender. Hammon also claims that Hamby was traded because they could move her and create enough cap space to sign a max free agent, and it's worth noting that they did sign former MVP and WNBA legend Candace Parker a week after the Hamby trade. It's also worth noting that the Aces had just won a championship without Hamby, who didn't come back from her bone bruise until late in the playoffs and wasn't nearly as effective as she can be when she's 100% healthy. So from a basketball perspective, the Aces could very well have been thinking, we don't necessarily need her to win, and moving her will give us a chance to sign Candace Parker, who can certainly move the needle as far as how good we can be. The WNBA also responded to the lawsuit by saying to CBS Sports, who did very thorough reporting on this, by the way, that, quote, "The league conducted a thorough investigation of the allegations and levied appropriate discipline based on its findings." I'm interested to see how this all plays out, but what I do know is that women athletes who want to have kids have to deal with the fact that their athletic prime, when they can make the most money at their sport, also overlaps with the time in their life when their bodies are best able to have kids. To me personally, if they want to have the kids, they should be able to do it and expect that their organization supports them in that decision, even though they might miss time or not be at their best when they do play. However, that's me as a person talking, and organizations are businesses, and they clearly treat pregnancy like an injury. The language in the league collective bargaining agreement seems to confirm this, as there are clauses addressing a player entering into a contract without disclosing that they're pregnant, like the Aces allegedly accused Hamby of doing. In the CBA, pregnancy, like an injury, is considered a condition under which a player is not available to provide playing services required under a playing contract. They do not give a damn about your family. They care about the product on the court and not paying players who can't play. It's most likely seen as worse than an injury, honestly, because pregnancy is preventable in ways injuries aren't, which aligns with some of the language that Dearica alleges Becky Hammond used. Even if you do everything the quote-unquote right way, which according to the CBA means disclosing you're pregnant in the middle of a contract you have already signed, like Hamby claims she did, even if it was shortly after she signed it, and like Skylar Diggins-Smith did for the Phoenix Mercury. Skylar revealed in August that she hasn't been able to train at the team's facilities while being on maternity leave. She got pregnant, didn't play, but the Mercury had to pay her full salary as negotiated in the CBA, and I'm guessing they didn't like that. So even though she's been ready to start working towards coming back, she can't use the facilities for the team she plays for. I'm guessing she won't be playing there next year, but all that feels so punitive and pointless. I understand that as a business, as an organization, you want Skylar or Dearica or whoever to be available to play. I can understand that being pregnant gets in the way of that and can hurt your chances of winning and success. And as a fan, I want them to play because I want my team to win. It's certainly a complicated issue, but just because it's complicated and it gets in the way of your goals as an organization, does that mean that you treat them poorly? No. It's a reality of women's sports. I mean, what are you going to do? Mandatory birth control? You can only have a baby during certain months to minimize games missed? Like, it's just, what's the solution? Imagine if we banned men's players from using their team's facilities when they got someone pregnant. We'd be talking about Sean Kemp like he was Greg Oden. Now, this current CBA expires in 2027, and I think the Players Association needs to do a better job of negotiating maternity protections in the next one, because you just cannot expect a business to act in the best interest of people ever, particularly its employees. We've seen that everywhere. And the WNBA is a business, and it operates similarly to other pro sports leagues. I made the mistake of conflating the personal views of some of the players who are more progressive and politically active and black with the progressiveness of the league itself. And it's possible the league is more progressive than other pro sports leagues, probably even likely. And even though I want every sports league to be progressive, I'm not naive enough to expect it or require it. I can deal with it. I mean, we just talked about the NFL and we know how they roll. But what I can't do and what you can't do is give organizations credit for things they aren't doing, particularly when they can use that credit as a shield for criticism. So I'll definitely keep you posted on this situation. In the meantime, this has been another episode of Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. Appreciate you watching and listening. Don't forget to share it too. And I will catch you next week.